Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where we are working to keep the facts straight. And that's enough. Is Social Security on the chopping block? No question that would be a political pitfall, but let's take a look at the facts and how they're being twisted, okay? By way of illustration about Social Security, look at another entitlement, Medicaid. President Trump promised to keep entitlements intact, but his party is actively eyeing cuts to the Medicaid safety net, dangling Trump's desire to extend his tax cuts and the necessary fiscal adjustments, like raising the debt ceiling that would be necessary, as leverage. Now, we'll see how that plays out. But now there's reason to believe the administration is eyeing Social Security as well. Reminder, Social Security payments to around 70 million old, injured Americans and their dependents, okay? There are multiple programs. We all pay into it. You see it on every pay stub. And the need for them is great. There's also this addition from the 80s called the Trust Fund. President Reagan put it in to create this kind of cushion of extra payroll tax input that would be put into the fund that exceeded the needs to help pay off over time when the needs increased. Controversial. Why? Some say he did it just to have another pocket to tap for spending. All right? Now, one of the things this sounds like a boring digression. It isn't. And I'll tell you why in a second, because Musk is making comments about this now that you need to understand. All that trust fund does is buy treasuries, which does allow the government more revenue to use in spending. But I digress. I'll get back to it. Trump has promised not to cut Social Security, but there are flagrant, fact-free attacks coming from his favorite proxy, Mr. Musk. So let's set the record straight. Musk first claimed that millions of people are fraudulently collecting Social Security. He put out that data showing that millions of people on the Social Security rolls were aged 150 and older. This was at best absurdly ignorant and potentially a planned deception. Here's the fact. Only about 90,000 retirees 99 and older get Social Security, not millions. Okay? That's the fact. He's wrong. Now, once this gross error was exposed, Musk backed off until he didn't. Then he goes to the administration's favorite digital megaphone, the Joe Rogan podcast, to peddle another frontal assault on Social Security, saying it's a Ponzi scheme.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Right, explain that.
Oh, so, well, people pay into Social Security, and the money goes out of Social Security immediately. Have you ever looked at the debt clock?
Yes. Okay.
There's our present day debt, but then there's our future obligations. So when you look at the future obligations of Social Security, the actual national debt is like double what people think it is because of the future obligations.
No, not it's, wait, Social Security isn't part of our debt structure? I mean, look, I know Musk is a genius. I'm not saying he isn't, but I also think, you know, if you're a parent, how like there are different kinds of intelligence with your kids. Some are really good quantitatively, but they have like a lousy EQ, their emotional quotient. Maybe Musk is great at some things, but he doesn't know government very well, okay? What he just said and what Rogan went to is demonstrably false. It's just wrong. Rogan sat there and listened because he doesn't do this job, which is why Musk went there in the first place, like many others do, to not get pushback and to put out ideas to tens of millions of people that will now become conventional BS wisdom, okay? And Rogan knows Musk has been wrong about this program in the past. How do we know? He admitted it.
Now they're talking about Social Security.
Yeah.
And that people are receiving Social Security that are 150 years old. But I don't think that is the reality as it's being explained by people who understand COBOL, the language.
Yeah,
but it doesn't even necessarily mean that all these people are receiving checks.
Right. Right. They're just listed on the files.
Right.
And it doesn't mean money's going out to them. And so, yeah, again, from a messaging perspective, does Elon need to screenshot that and then send it out as a tweet or whatever we call X nowadays? And then suddenly you've got, a couple million people going, oh my God, we're paying dead people. Well,
Right. That's the problem with being hyperbolic.
Yeah, that is the problem with being hyperbolic, and you just let him do it again. You needed that other guy at the table, okay? The trust fund is borrowed by government, sometimes to be used on spending. You can debate that. But the idea that Social Security is what's ballooning our debt is demonstrably false. It's not how it works. So why did he just sit there? I don't know. Why did he submit to Musk's mendacity? I don't know. I honestly believe that there is an excitement among a certain part of the population to be part of the everything sucks crusade. Let's just tear it all down. But I'm going to tell you something. Any jackass can kick down a barn. It takes a good man or woman to make one better. And I think they're really heavy on the kick it down part and really light on the making things better. The response to the claim is simple. I just gave you the part about the debt, okay? Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. One is a scam. The other has worked for generations. Musk is twisting the reality that Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, meaning what you know it means. Workers now pay in for the benefits of the retirees, who paid in for those who retired before them. A Ponzi scheme, which in deference to Italians, should now be called a Madoff scheme. He ripped off many more than Ponzi did with the same technique. Those schemes take new investors' money, pay off old investors. Scam collapses when the new investors realize there's no there, right? It's just fraud. Social Security is not going to just suddenly collapse in the future. There will always be more workers in the future to pay retirees on top of the trust fund. Now, instead of, it's rigged, it sucks, Musk, the alleged genius, better ideas guy, could argue the program needs to be adjusted to deal with growing obligations, because it does. There are more people retiring than entering the workforce to pay the retirees. Another reason immigration matters. The CBO estimates the trust fund will get depleted by 2035 unless there are fixes. And here's the good news. There are a lot of obvious fixes that have been suggested for decades. In fact, this was the first media work I did 25 plus years ago, researching Social Security fixes for Generation X. The most obvious one would be to allow more income to be exposed to these payroll taxes. Right now, the income that is exposed to the tax is capped at $175 grand a year. Anything over that is exempt. This is not a radical idea. Why? Because we already do this with Medicare. There's no cap on the earnings there, and that's why that program is more stable. Not perfect, but more stable. If the government expanded, let's say, the cap to 400 grand instead of 175, the trust fund would be solvent for a long time. There are many other obvious ideas to address the upcoming concerns, but these guys seem more interested in just saying how everything's going to get worse. And to help it along, they're making it worse. Trump is laying off 12% of the Social Security Administration's workforce when they are already understaffed and experiencing an onslaught of new beneficiaries. That is not going to make the program any better unless what your goal is to prove that it's bad. I don't know. That's very sinister, very dark. Hope it's not true. Experts say cutting this way is going to affect the 70 million who need the benefits. Certainly, a genius like Musk should be able to think of even more solutions, right? Though his nonsense suggestion that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, on top of his gross miscalculations about who gets benefits, added to his Doge savings getting cut to a fraction of what he boasted when it was revealed they were getting the programs and the count wrong. And of course, his apparent misunderstanding not only of how our debt works, but of how judicial review works in the Constitution as a check on the executive. Again, I'm not saying he's not a genius, but maybe he's a genius in other ways, not in like the knowing history or civics way. Unless, of course, it's not that he doesn't know. He does know that the federal courts get to review executive orders, and that he isn't just getting calculations wrong when he's a math genius, but that he's intentionally trying to undermine your faith in our government. That is a much darker suggestion, and I hope it's not true. But all I know for now is that what he's saying about Social Security is demonstrably false and clearly designed to undermine confidence in the program, not to make it better. I don't know how you make America anything greater than she already is by destroying one of our society's signature safety nets. You want to make it better, you want to change it, great. But just trashing everything? Is that what we voted for? Is that what you voted for? So let's keep the facts straight and see where the ideas are for making anything better. Again, it's easy to kick down a barn. It's hard to make one better. So we're not just seeing this with Social Security. I see the same toxic dynamic in Ukraine, the dynamic there. Is Trump wrong to put pressure on Zelensky? Of course not. It's his call as president of the United States. They are wholly dependent on us. And he wants that war to end, and they have to play a role in that. And he is frustrated by what Zelensky did in the Oval Office and not being on bended knee. Okay. Now, what is his reaction? Clearly, Zelensky has not done what you have to do with Trump if you want to get him back at the table, which is, you may not like that that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And until that happens, Trump's going to do what he does. He's going to make things harder. Okay? So, what do we know? What is going to happen right now is that they are going to turn the screws on Ukraine. Okay? What they're going to do right now is slow down aid and maybe cut aid. We have sound of the president saying just that.
Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal, and if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long. Because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else.
Now, I know a lot of people are trashing the president, but look, this is a political judgment, and it's his to make, okay? I may not agree with it, but I'm not the president. But I do think that the facts need contextualizing here. Why was the United States in support of Ukraine? Because Russia isn't looking to just protect against NATO. It wants to expand. It has made that clear time and time again. And remember, nobody thought this more than Trump's party, okay? And when Ukraine was invaded by Russia, what happened? You guys were all into it. There were yellow and blue flags all over the place, led by Republicans. Biden was in power, but they were all about it. Then Trump comes back in, and what? We get reminded that he hates Zelensky because of that stupid phone call that led to a second impeachment. And his party had to turn tail because that's what they have to do if they don't want to get primaried. But this idea that Ukraine is a country with a culture and history of corruption is true. This idea that America interfered with a democratically elected government to install its own puppet is not true. The former president, which was actually a dictatorship, was Russia's puppet, Viktor Yanukovych. And Zelensky came in as part of the rejection movement to that puppet regime when he went back to Russia, hint, hint. When Yanukovych went back to Russia, hint, hint, they had the election, and Zelensky won on a reform ticket. That's just the truth. Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.